Good morning and welcome to Children's Chapel. As you see, we are still here in the North Castle. We have just spent an awesome week here learning about some fun things from the Bible, from the King's Book, which I have right here. And I just wanted to go through our Bible stories for the week so we can remember all of the awesome things that we talked about, which was the armor of God. And so first, we read about Daniel in the fiery furnace and about his three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and how they stayed true to God and they showed King Nebuchadnezzar who the true God was, and then everybody learned from them. And so we talked about the belt of truth. That was the first day, and how that will help us all to stand true to God. That's our first piece of armor. And then our second piece of armor came with a story of David and Goliath, and that was the breastplate of justice. And we saw that the tiny little David stood up to the giant Goliath because God was on his side. And David was not scared because he knew that the battle belonged to the Lord, and it wasn't up to people to decide what was just, but God would stand there for him and decide. And then third, we talked about the shoes of peace. And with that was the story of the birth of Jesus, who we call the Prince of Peace, and how Jesus gives us an everlasting peace, a peace that surpasses all understanding. And sometimes it's hard for us to lean into that, but we know that Jesus is there and that he will give us that peace if we can rest in that truth. And then we talked about, on the fourth day, we talked about having faith, and that story was Peter walking on water towards Jesus. And if you remember, it was a stormy sea and it was windy. Jesus was walking towards the boat, and Peter wanted to walk on the water too. And Jesus said, "Come on out, walk on the water." And then Peter walked on the water, and he was looking at Jesus, but then he looked at the wind and the waves, and he started to sink. And so that reminds us that when we put our faith in Jesus, then we can do things that are maybe beyond our normal abilities. But when we look at what's all around us and we don't have faith in Jesus, then we start to sink down. And then lastly, on the fifth day, we talked about the helmet of salvation. And that story was Paul and Silas in prison, and the big earthquake came and shattered the jail cell doors, and they could have escaped, but they didn't because they didn't want the jailer to get in trouble. And then the jailer was so surprised that they stayed, and he listened to them, and they told him about Jesus, and the jailer had faith in Jesus, and then they went home and told his whole family, and they all believed and were baptized that very night. So that was our awesome story of salvation, and how the helmet of salvation protects us from things that might confuse us. And so we have that on our heads to protect our minds. And so we know that the truth of Jesus is that we are children of the kingdom, and that God loves us so much, and that there is nothing that can separate us from the love of Jesus. And so that was our awesome week at VBS in a nutshell, and we went through the King's Book every day. And if you want, if you need more copies of the videos from VBS, then send me an email and I can send you the videos. They're really fun. They told the Bible stories in a really funny way, and they have some great music. So that's it for today. I hope you have a great afternoon, and I will see you soon.